Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you may be listening to this here podcast. I just felt to come on here on my podcast just to tell you how I've been doing. Excuse me for my voice, how I am and how things have been going for me. My podcast is still reaching out to single women everywhere, letting them know my story. If you read the beginning of my podcast, I told you things that I went through, how I've been, how I felt, how I got through it, how I decided to stay out of it, the many trials and the situations, the sadness, the happiness, the wanting to give up, everything you could think of, I went through. I had to make a decision. I had to choose to go forth to live my life, to say that I know all things are possible, not to give up. I had to continue going forward. Um, some days have been hard, some days have been easy, some days have been great, some days have been awesome, some days have been wow. But I choose to continue doing my podcast. Excuse me. Sometimes, when I get and I look at my podcast, see if um, any remarks or anyone has said anything, or sometimes I get discouraged because I feel that I'm not helping any single woman, and I get discouraged about that. But then I have to think again. When I was in that abusive lifestyle, that it was hard for me to talk to anybody. I wouldn't talk to anybody. I wouldn't tell nobody what I was going through because I was so ashamed. I felt that I not only let myself down. I let my mother down because I didn't even go to my mother when I was having difficulty because I was too ashamed. And because sometimes your mother always tell you, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't get in that relationship. Sometimes, we think mothers don't understand, but my mother understood, but I was too ashamed to, let her know what was going on in the relationship I had. Um, I didn't want her to make I didn't want her to say, I told you so. But I knew she wasn't going to do that. But that was just my thought pattern. I told you so, my thought pattern. She would stop loving my thought pattern. She would make fun of me, my thought pattern. She was, say, my thought pattern. I had, felt that if I told her, if I went to her and I said, told her that, I need your help, she would say, well, I told you so. And that, that wouldn't help me. But I know my mother wouldn't have said that, but that's the mindset that I had. This is the mindset that this man had me believing because he would tell me, don't nobody care about you. Your mother don't care about you, because he didn't like my mother. He didn't care for my family. Because he knew that if I would expose him to my family, expose him to let them know what exactly I was going through, that they would convince me to get out of it. He needed to keep controlling me, and he needed to make sure that he had the upper hand at all times. He needed to feel that he had the right to do what he did when he wanted to do it and how often he wanted to do it. So he had me on that mindset that, what he was doing, he loved me. This is my mindset. He loved me. And, he would say things, and, because my self esteem was very low. And I would believe him because I had no one else talking in my ear saying, don't believe that. He doesn't love you. He's hurting you. Get out of that. He had me to the point where I wouldn't listen to nobody. I wouldn't tell nobody. I wouldn't even tell his sisters. I wouldn't tell his parents of how he was treated. I wouldn't do that because I didn't want to make him look bad. Even though I was being hurt, I was being, looking bad. I didn't want to hurt him. And that's the mindset I was in. That's the when you have no self-esteem about yourself, when you don't have any concern about your feelings, all you want to do is please the individual that's abusing you. Your mindset is okay. He tells me he loves me, and he says he's sorry once he does what he does, and because it wasn't an everyday thing, I stayed. So, as sit and I look over my podcast and I listen to, what I recorded. I listen to it and I think and I said, you know what? At the time that I was going through this, at the time that I was being abused, at the time I had no self esteem, at the time I was sitting in this dark space, at the time I was feeling lost, you know what? I didn't, I sit and when I listen to my podcast, I said, oh my God, he had total, complete control over me. He had total, complete control over my feelings, my thoughts, my joy, my peace. He had control. I was like a puppet. He had the strings. He controlled my movements. He controlled me just like when he had puppets on a string. You want them to move, they move. You don't want them to move, they don't move. You want them to sit down, you sit them down. You want them to stand up, you stand them up. You had control you have control over the puppet. So he had control over me. I was that puppet. But I didn't see it that way. I saw it that, he loved me. And, this is what, this is what I, as a single woman that was in an abusive lifestyle, this is what I thought. This is my thought pattern that what he's doing is okay because he tell me he's sorry. What he did, he apologized, and it wasn't happening every day. It wasn't happening all the time. He didn't he didn't hurt our children. My children never seen me sad because I made sure they didn't see the stress. It was just my two girls. I didn't have my son at the time. I had my son after I left him. So it was my two girls. They didn't see anything. Um, I didn't allow them to think evil, bad, to hate their father. I didn't want that. You know, my father, he wasn't around. My mother and my dad, they got a divorce. And my father, started a new, life, got remarried. And I didn't see my father that much. And, that hurts, when a young lady, she needs her father around. She needs her father to be there for her. Well, my father wasn't there. Even when I, got in this relationship, my father wasn't in my life. He never knew anything about what happened, the abuse that I went through. He's no longer here. He passed. He never, I never told him about my lifestyle, never. And so I didn't want my girls to not have a father because to me, father was a very important part of children's lives. And even though he was mistreating me, he didn't mistreat our daughters. He didn't beat them, slap them, cuss them out, anything. He didn't physically abuse them, mentally abuse them, never. He treated them with love, but it was me that he took all the abuse. And I said, and when I listened to my podcast, I said, I thank God that he never hurt my daughters. They never knew what I went through with their father. Never. My youngest daughter, she knew, once she listened to my podcast, but I never told them uh, anything about what I went through. But I made sure that I showed love, and I made sure that they loved their father. That, I made sure that I kept the hurt that I was going through away from them. I made sure that they didn't see the tears. I made sure that they didn't see the hate. I made sure they didn't hear anything, because usually whenever the abuse would start, they was either in daycare or in school, and they didn't see what was happening, or they were asleep and they didn't hear what was happening. Um, I never spoke any negative to my girls about their father. I didn't want them to see him in no other light but how they were seeing him. So, when I go and I go back and I listen to the different podcasts that I made, and I say to myself, wow, man, what I went through. Not that I forgot it. No, I know what I went through. Excuse me. I know what I went through. I know how I felt. But by doing a podcast, me telling another single woman, excuse me, get a drink of water from my voice, but letting other single women, that's what my main reason for doing the podcast, to let, excuse me, other single women know that's in an abusive relationship, what I went through, how I was feeling, how I was hurt, how I was discouraged, how I thought myself as a nothing, how I beat myself up, how I didn't want to, I couldn't uh, put on, makeup or, fix it up, because if I did that, he thought I was fixing myself up for somebody and some other man. So I didn't, I would fix myself up when, when we would go places. Yeah, we went different places. We went to visit his parents. He would take me out. We would go out. My girls would be at his parents' house to babysit when we were going out. And I didn't want them to stay overnight. So I, made sure, I go pick them up. I didn't drink. I maybe had one drink. But he did the drinking, and I did the driving, because he got to the point. I knew he couldn't drive; he was drunk. So we came home, and I bring my girls home, put them in bed, and some nights would be fine when he's drinking. He'd go to sleep, and then some nights it was on. It was like he said I was looking at a man when we was out, or I was flirting with a man. Any excuse to hurt me, he would do. So, when I listen to my podcast, go back on my podcast, it encourages me to keep doing my podcast, because there's a single woman out there who's been abused or have been in an abusive lifestyle, and she needs to know that someone else been through the same thing. You can't help somebody get through something if you ain't been through what they're going through. So, you can't say I understand what you're going through if you haven't been there, if you haven't felt that, if you haven't experienced that. Only way you can help somebody through a situation, you have to have been there. And I can help a single woman who's in an abusive lifestyle. I can help her, because I can say, I know what you're going through. I've been there. I know how you're feeling. So that is my main goal, is to speak to single women everywhere. May come a time where I can have my podcast in different languages, so that they can hear my different, in their language. Because it's not just Americans that are being abused. No, it's every single woman everywhere that's in an abusive relationship. You can't say there's no women nowhere being abused. That would be a lie, because it happens. It happens all the time. You may not hear about it. We have, abuses once. 1 month a year. But abuse doesn't happen 1 month a year. It happens 12 months a year, 365 days a year. A woman is being abused. A single woman is being abused. I can't speak on marriage and married women being abused because I'm not married. I can't speak on that. Only thing I can speak on is single women in abusive lifestyle. It's not something that you say, it's all good. It's not. They're in this lifestyle, so their self-esteem is going low, low, and low. So, single woman, I'm here for you. Like I said, if you want to contact me, you can. BeingMissDiva@gmail.com. I'm on YouTube channel. You can reach out to me and I'll get back with you because I know what it feels like to live an abusive lifestyle. Been there, done that, and know exactly how it feels. So, like I always say, most of all, God loves you. He sees, He knows, He sees it all. He still loves you, no matter what you go through, single women. God never stops loving you. So be encouraged. Remember, Miss Diva is there for you. You could reach out to me through my Gmail. You go on the YouTube channel, listen to my experiences, what I went through. But like I said, I've been doing great. Still, reaching out to single women, still doing my podcast. We'll continue to do my podcast because I have love and concern for single women that's going through a lifestyle of abuse. I'm there for you. I understand. And remember, God loves you, and so do I. Have an awesome day. Be blessed. Don't give up. Your help is right there. Always remember that. Be blessed.